Arianna Huffington, born in Athens, Greece, she moved to England when she was 16 to study economics at Cambridge. At 21, she became the university's first non-British president of its prestigious debating society. After launching a successful career as an author and becoming a well-known political commentator, she founded the Huffington Post as a new kind of news site in 2005. 2 years later, she collapsed from exhaustion. That transformed her philosophy on life. Now as CEO of Thrive Global, she's on a mission to end burnout culture and redefine success. Arianna Huffington is in the spotlight. Arianna, thank you so much for having us in your beautiful home. You've had such an incredible year. Founder and CEO of Thrive Global, which you're running now. You also, of course, years ago founded the Huffington Post. You've been a power player in business for decades. In 2007, you almost died. What happened and how did it change your career trajectory?
So in 2007, I collapsed from exhaustion, sleep deprivation, burnout, hit my head on my desk, broke my cheekbone. And as I went from doctor to doctor, from MRI to echocardiogram to find out what was wrong with me, I was actually diagnosed with burnout, which in 2007 wasn't a term that was much in use. But that's what changed my life, not just in terms of how I changed my daily habits, but in terms of how I wanted to change the culture, because I realized that we're all suffering under this collective delusion that in order to be successful, in order to achieve, we did not have the luxury, as it was seen, to take care of ourselves. And the science is so contradictory. The truth is that the more we take care of ourselves, the more creative we are, the more effective we are, the more successful we are. But changing the culture has not been easy. And by 2016, I realized that I didn't just want to continue raise awareness about these issues, which I could have done through a media company. I wanted to help people change behavior. And for that, I needed to build a behavior change technology company. So I left the Huffington Post and launched Thrive.
So what's so interesting to me about this moment of 2007 and this aha moment you had is that it's much easier to think about health when you already have wealth and success. And in order to achieve the success that you did with Huffington Post, maybe you had to be a workaholic. And I wonder if in retrospect, you feel like you could have even gotten to that place of success without running yourself ragged.
1,000% yes. And probably even more so, however we define success. Because Julia, 2007, the Huffington Post was just 2 years old, barely. Our success, winning a Pulitzer, launching in 18 countries, et cetera, happened after that. But most important, just think of your life. Is it a successful life if you end up in a pool of blood on the floor of your office? And now we have so much data and so much science that in fact we are more effective when we give ourselves time to recharge.
Was it hard for you to retrain yourself? I mean, it was one thing to see all the data and another thing to actually change the way you lived your life.
Absolutely, it's hard. It's hard. I mean, it's hard for young people right now. Even though the culture is changing, even now you have Silicon Valley CEOs competing with each other about how much sleep they got, and how much deep sleep and how much REM sleep, and wearing their Aura rings, which I'm wearing. So that would have been impossible to imagine in 2007. But despite that, especially for younger people starting in their career, there is still the fear that if they take time to recharge and take care of themselves, they're going to be left behind. And I want to tell everybody listening, it is not true.
There's definitely been a cultural change since 2007, and you've really helped drive this change to focus on the value and power of sleep. But I even remember one night I was reading your book, and I was staying up late reading the book, and it takes more than just intellectually understanding you're supposed to. So for you, did you struggle to implement these principles that you knew were better for you?
What happened is that I struggled at the beginning, but then what happened, Julia, is that as I changed my habits, and as I talked to many scientists whom I brought into Thrive now, to help us with the power of microsteps. Like, it's not about New Year resolutions, I'm going to get 8 hours sleep or give up sugar or whatever. It's very hard to keep these resolutions. But if you think of microsteps, which is at the heart of what we do at Thrive, small, daily, incremental steps that gradually become healthier habits and a healthier life, you begin to feel differently. You begin to see how you are more creative, you are a better leader, you are less reactive, you come up with better ideas, you face challenges better. So it's impossible not to see the difference.
And so you think that the realization that these aren't just things that are better for you, but you actually see their impact, you see their value in your day-to-day lives. That's what got you to really change your lifestyle.
Exactly, and that's what made me an evangelist, because, you know, you've known me for a long time. I just don't want to live by these values myself. I want to help people, and people in all circumstances, not just successful people, but we work with Walmart, for example, minimum wage associates, people who are struggling, especially today, Julia, when we have 129 million people in this country suffering from chronic diseases, diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure. And these 5 daily behaviors can change these outcomes. They are more important than our genes in changing health outcomes.
I want to dig more into which of these micro steps are most important to you, but first, just to get to this idea that for you, you became an evangelist.
Yes.
You didn't just change your own lifestyle and go about your business with more sleep and less stress. You decided that you had to effectively, publicly repudiate this grinded out, work all the time lifestyle that you were part of as part of this media culture, digital media culture, and sort of go very public with your realizations.
Yes.
What made you decide to be so out in the public about the realization that the way you used to live wasn't good for you, and it wasn't good for a lot of other people out there?
So I think there's something in my DNA that when I learn something, when I become convinced about something, I have to shout it from the rooftops. And I find the most exciting thing about life is to be a continuous learner, you know, to keep learning and learning. And learning and just keeping the knowledge for yourself is something that I've never done. I've always wanted to spread it.
And you've been a writer, you've written, I think, 15 books, so always putting your education out there. But I want to hear about your wellness hacks, because you have a grandchild here, you have another baby grandkid who's here as well, you are meeting with Anthropic, you're running this big company, you're meeting with Walmart. How do you do it all? What are your most important wellness hacks?
Well, here's what is interesting. When I take care of myself, which for me means getting enough sleep, and incidentally, people watching may wonder, what's enough sleep? According to the latest science, 7 to 9 hours. Like, you may be a 7-hour.
So what are you? How much sleep do you get?
I'm an 8-hour girl.
Okay.
But you may be a 7-hour.
Well, I also have an Aura ring,
yes,
and I've only had it for maybe 9 months now, and I'm kind of obsessed with it. What kind of sleep scores do you get?
So, I mean, I would say 90% of the time really good, and 10% of the time really bad. And part of this journey is acknowledging that we are a work in progress. There are no judgments in this journey. We call it like the GPS in your car. You know, when you get in your car and you put the GPS on and you at some point ignore the GPS for some reason and take a different turning, your GPS doesn't say, Arianna, this was really idiotic. It just recalculates. So that's so important. A lot of people have a hard time on this health journey because they judge themselves. So for me, it's sleep, exercise is now kind of central. Again, it gives me so much energy. But at Thrive, we start with movement. We don't even call it exercise. The majority of people in this country are so sedentary that getting people off the couch, walking or going up the steps or whatever, is a huge step forward. And we want to meet people where they are.
In a non-judgmental way. It seems like that's the consistency.
Start somewhere.
Yeah, it's just amazing how much data there is now. This other phenomenon that we've seen the past couple of years is this rise of GLP-1s.
Yes.
And you mentioned how many Americans have chronic disease, so many Americans are obese, but GLP-1s seem like the totally other end of the spectrum than your philosophy of microsteps. How do they fit into your philosophy of microsteps?
Not at all. And we actually work with Eli Lilly, we work with many pharma companies. One of our mottos is medicines plus healthy habits beat either alone. A lot of people have had incredible success with GLP-1s. But what we now know is that if you take the GLP-1 and at the same time you change the way you eat, and you deal with your stress, and you sleep better, and you exercise so you don't lose muscle, it's going to be a much more effective result.
And so you're now partnered with these massive companies like Walmart and helping them understand the value that they're getting, not by just providing healthcare, but by providing your tools as well. Where do you see this all going, and how much do you think corporate America is starting to understand that it's not just enough to provide standard health insurance?
Well, what is great now, and that's why I'm excited about this moment in the zeitgeist, is that companies are realizing that to have really productive employees, they need to have healthy employees. You look at the numbers, Julia, and you see the impact of disease on attrition, on productivity, on healthcare costs. You know, healthcare costs at the moment are going up between 7 and 12% among self-insured employers. So what's happening for the first time, we see that among many of our customers, which are the biggest self-insured employers in the country, we see that healthcare costs have been elevated from the HR team to the CFO and the CEO. And that's why helping employees adopt healthier habits is the least expensive way to manage not just diabetes and weight, but cardiometabolic disease, which is the biggest killer.
You've been writing so much about AI recently, and you mentioned Anthropic, and you have a big partnership with OpenAI. How do you see AI fitting into the way people can think about their health and take care of themselves?
Well, for me, one of the most exciting possibilities of AI is how it's going to make it easier for people to adopt healthier habits. You know, when we talk about AI and health, the focus tends to be on improved diagnostics, accelerated speed in drug development, and these are obviously extremely important. But for me, the moonshot is that AI and the AI health coach that we are launching in partnership with the OpenAI Startup Fund is based on helping people through the AI power of hyper-personalization to get exactly the right nudges at the right time so that they can actually, through these microsteps, adopt healthier habits around sleep or food or stress. Because the AI coach will know everything about you to the extent that you'll share it. You know, it will have your calendar. It will know, for example, that you're finishing this interview and then you have to go and pick up your son from school. And then they will see that you have 20 minutes free before your next appointment. So it will say, Julia, what about if you jump on your treadmill or go for a walk, or depending on what you normally do, or do squats or whatever during that time. So it's basically becomes your personal agent. This is now the new term as opposed to co-pilot. Your personal agent who can help you adopt healthier habits and who never judges you.
I don't want to do squats right now.
Right, and that's fine. It will be, but if you don't like squats, it will never recommend squats because it will know you.
It'll
That's
know what
the
I
other
like
thing.
and what I don't like. But so when is this tool launching?
Well, it already launched with Eli Lilly. It's not a consumer tool. We are only launching it for now with companies. Like we're going to be launching it soon with Hilton and Adobe and Disney, or with pharma companies like Eli Lilly, that's also a strategic investor in the company.
You wrote in one of your pieces about AI that it can be used as a sort of GPS for the soul. Unpack that for us. What does that mean?
Well, what it means is that now that we know that AI will be more intelligent than humans. I did a conversation with Sam Altman at JP Morgan's Tech 100 conference, and I said to him, so what is the world that your children, he has a little son, will inherit? What's the world because of AI that's going to be so different? He said, my children will never be more intelligent than AI. And we are now all coming to believe that. And because of that, human beings have to ask the question, so if we're not our IQ, if we're not defined by our intelligence, who are we? And that's where we are going to have to actually come to terms with the fact that we are not just material beings defined by our intelligence, that we have consciousness, or you prefer to call it soul or spirit or Atman. The word you use doesn't matter. What matters is to recognize that we are more than intelligence.
I thought it was so interesting to see you weigh in on this question of the longevity competition that's going on right now, especially in Silicon Valley among a lot of these tech companies. There's this longevity movement. A lot of people have made a lot of money in the tech industry spending fortunes to try to live forever or to live for hundreds of years. You came out against this.
Well, here's the thing. It's such a complete delusion that we're going to live forever. There is truly zero scientific evidence that we're going to live forever. We can expand our lifespan and we can definitely dramatically improve our health span, but we're not going to live forever. I think one of the problems with this longevity craze is that people are wasting so much time every day doing things that are both unproductive and unfulfilling, that I think instead of trying to live forever, how about trying to improve how you spend your day?
You're very bullish on AI, but it sounds like you're more critical of social media.
Oh, I'm very critical of social media, and I feel that AI can be a defense against social media.
What do you mean?
By helping people be much more aware of themselves, of their habits. And when AI helps us use our time more effectively to bring us more meaning and fulfillment, we're going to make better decisions. And we're less likely to waste our time down the rabbit holes of social media or being triggered by the worst aspects of ourselves.
So you think that AI can bring out our better angels?
If we work on it, none of that is automatic, but it has the potential to tap into our better angels. And it's absolutely essential that we use AI to help human beings evolve. And if we're going to be partners with AI, we can't put all our bets on the machines. We also have to bet on humans.
Watching your career trajectory and going from Huffington Post to Thrive Global, now looking at how you're partnering with all these different companies, you've managed to succeed in so many different spaces. What is it about your leadership style that has enabled such success in varied worlds?
Well, let me tell you what is my top leadership book. It's a book by Marcus Aurelius called Meditations. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome for 19 years, but he was also a Stoic philosopher. And he wrote this book about how to lead from a place that we could now call the eye of the hurricane. You know, he faced invasions and betrayals and a 13-year plague. So for me, leadership is about knowing how to move into that centered place of wisdom, peace, and resilience in us. Because that's the place from which you can also not just make great decisions, not just look at where the icebergs are before they hit the Titanic, which is one of the most important functions of leadership, to look at the future and see where the world is going, but also to communicate that to your employees, to the people you lead.
But for you and your leadership style, not many people mention Marcus Aurelius when they talk about their favorite leadership books. Is this something that you've come to more recently since you've been running Thrive, or has this always been your North Star?
That's been my North Star. You know, I was, as you can hear from the accent, I was brought up in England. I mean, after I was born in Greece, and I lived in a one-bedroom apartment. I just kind of had an amazing mother who trusted that you could take risks. And if you failed, that's not the end of the world. And so I always wanted to explore the deeper part of what it means to be human. At the age of 17, I went to India and studied comparative religion. And one of the mottos we have at Thrive is onward, upward, and inward. I think when people just see their lives as just onward, upward, that's when they burn out. That's when they deal with anxiety and depression. When we also cultivate that inner space, which is really what Marcus Aurelius is talking about, the journey is very different.
So if you've always had this big picture approach, this finding the calm within the storm, how has your leadership changed in the past 10 years?
Well, how it's changed is, and that's so important for all of us to realize, it's one thing to know things, to believe things, and it's another thing to put them in daily practice. It's what you said. You know you should be getting enough sleep. You know you should be eating right, etc., etc. But doing it is so much harder. So I kind of knew things early on in my life, but it took a while for me to integrate them into my daily life.
You've been mentioned as a mentor to so many women, especially who I've interviewed over the years. I'm wondering who your mentors are.
Well, my mentor, without question, is my mother. But I want to mention another woman who is alive, because my mother is not. My mentor is my mother because she always felt that the universe is on your side. You know how some people are in a perpetual state of anxiety? What neuroscientists call negative bias, negative fantasies, imagining the worst is going to happen. And Julia, that's so important because our brain doesn't distinguish between something really bad happening and something that we imagine is happening. And that's why I have this little quote on my desk from the French philosopher Montaigne, who said, "There were many terrible things in my life, but most of them never happened." But physiologically, we have the same levels of stress, the same impact on our health as if it had happened. So my mother was instrumental in my being willing to take risks, like applying to go to Cambridge, when literally I had this idea because I saw Cambridge in a magazine. I didn't speak English. We didn't have money. But he said, let's find out how you can get into Cambridge. But here's the best thing. And if you don't get into Cambridge, there will be another adventure. So what she gave me is the sense that life is an adventure. And there are failures along the way. She used to say that failure is not the opposite of success. It's a stepping stone to success.
What was your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
The most painful failure was my second book. My first book I wrote when I was 23, and it was a big success about the changing role of women. And then I didn't want to write anymore about women. I had said everything I knew. So I locked myself up and wrote a book on leadership, believe it or not. And I got 37 rejections, by which time I had run out of money, the money I had made from my first book. And I started thinking that, hey, maybe the first book was a fluke and I need to go get a real job. And I remember literally, I lived in London at the time, walking down St. James's Street, kind of depressed, and seeing Barclays Bank in the corner. And something made me go into the bank and ask the manager if I could have a loan, or what the Brits call an overdraft. And I had no assets. For some reason, he gave it to me. And that kept me going until I got an acceptance for the book.
But so now when you find yourself in a tough moment, who do you call?
So somebody that I love, and she calls me her big sister, and I call her my little sister, is Sheryl Sandberg. She is just a very dear friend. You know, she and I met while she was still at Google, so many years ago. We can talk about anything, we can share anything. She even started a personal lean-in group of a great group of women, and we meet once a month, and we're all there for each other. And it's just a great sense of knowing there is someone that you can always call to cry on their shoulder, and they can always call to cry on your shoulder. And another woman that I admire so much is Alice Walton. She and I are working together on changing health in Arkansas and America generally, and I so admire what she's doing around health. You know, the medical school she's opening in October, on the grounds of the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art that she opened, because she wants to prove that you can have holistic health. You can have doctors trained not just on conventional, important Western medicine, but also on nutrition and sleep and everything else, and do it on the grounds of a beautiful Arkansas landscape where they can walk and stop for lunch at the museum.
Before we wrap up, I have to ask you a final piece of advice. What's the best advice you've ever gotten, or what advice would you give to young people now trying to navigate this crazy world with AI and social media and all these different things?
Well, my advice, which I promise I follow, is to pick a time at the end of the day that you declare as the end of your working day. Because let's face it, there is no end to our working day. And if anybody listening has an end to their working day, they need to change jobs, because it means their job is not interesting enough. Nobody with an interesting job has an end to their day, right? You could spend all night answering emails, texts, prepping for interviews. So you have to declare an end to the working day. And the way I declare the end to my working day is taking my phone and my iPad and my laptop outside my bedroom. And it isn't just about blue lights, etc. It's about the fact that these are the repositories of every problem and every project that we are dealing with. And in order to be able to sleep and deeply recharge, we need to separate ourselves from that. And so in bed, I only read physical books, and I read poetry, I read fiction, I read history, nothing to do with media, healthcare, geopolitical issues. And I feel this is so important because we all need to build pathways to that centered place in ourselves.
Well, it's very good advice. I don't currently follow that advice, but I'm going to try it.
But I don't judge you, Julia.
I'm going to try.
This is a judgment-free zone.
Thank you, Arianna, so much for having us here and for this conversation.
Thank you, Julia.